Welcome back. Moving on to our next topic this afternoon. Will cultured meat be the future of livestock industry? In this session, we'll be discussing on the frontier of cell-based technologies and how the cell-based startups tackle food security and consumer acceptance. We have two keynote speakers joining us. Director and co-founder of Gaia Foods, Vinayaka Srinivas, and the co-founder and CEO of Gourmet, Nicholas Morin-Forrest, and also our special moderator for this session, Christian Cadio, Managing Partner, Big Idea Ventures. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. Hi.
Hi, I'd now like to hand it over to our moderator.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you for the introduction and having us with you today. Unfortunately, Christian Cadio was held up on an emergency, so I'm here in his place. So my name is Dalal Ghawas. I'm the program director at Big Idea Ventures. And there I'm sort of responsible for running the accelerator. So before we get started, it's a pleasure to have you both with us today, Nicholas and Vin. And just for the audience members who maybe are not so familiar with this category. So we're living in sort of a world where we have an unsustainable and fragile food supply system. This has been shown from the the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, how fragile this is and how with the current livestock industry, there's a lot of chances for, let's say, diseases, virus crossover that can, disrupt and decimate animal populations, thus creating shortages and volatile food prices. So, my questions for, the audience and for our, our amazing panelists today is, your companies, maybe you could tell us a little bit about, what you're doing and how your company is creating solutions for this unstable food supply system. Maybe Nicholas, you'd like to go first.
Sure, thank you, Dalal. I'm very happy to be on stage virtually today with you. My name is Nicholas. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Gourmet. So we're a cultured meat company actually based in France, in Paris. This is where I'm speaking from. And yeah, as Dalal mentioned, the conventional meat supply chain has shown strong weaknesses. Before the pandemic, it had shown already that it was rather unsustainable when you look at intensive farming, posing also safety issues. So by essentially cultivating cells instead of entire living animals, which is what we do, we offer very, very promising solutions to one of the major weaknesses of the conventional supply chain. And a few words about our company. So Gourmet, we are a poultry meat company. So we're working on duck and chicken meat, providing sustainable, healthy, and humane meat. And our first product is a product that is very famous globally, a very famous French delicacy, which is foie gras, which is also known for the controversy around the production method of the product. So this is our first product, and we will be also launching other poultry meat products in the next years to come.
Thank you, Nicholas. And this is something facing, I would say, regions, all over the world. So, Dr. Vinayaka, for Singapore, how is your company sort of solving some of these food challenges?
Hi, thanks, Dalal, and thanks for the opportunity to speak in this event. I'm Vinayaka. I'm the founder and CEO of Gaia Foods. We are a Singapore-based cultured red meat company, and our main aim is to focus on producing meat for Asian consumers. As mentioned, as other audience mentioned, cultured meat is a technology wherein you take a small piece of animal samples and grow the meat that you are going to eat. Instead of growing the whole animal and destroying the environment, we are proposing a very straightforward idea, which will reduce the impact on our environment. And this technology has a potential to significantly change the way in which we are going to produce the meat in the future. And what we are focusing on sitting in Asia is we are focusing on red meat, that is like beef, pork, and lambs. So when you look at the red meat sector as a whole, Asia is responsible for almost like 40% of the global red meat consumed. But the options for Asians to consume cultured meat are hardly any available. So that's why we are based in Singapore, and we are trying to produce meat for Asian consumers. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you guys have. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. And, just for those of you, who are also thinking, how are they sort of, I would say going about this technology? I think, with our busy lives and schedules, we all wish we could clone ourselves. And this is essentially what they're doing, cloning animal cells for, let's say meat consumption. So I'm just curious, from the safety side, especially that this is going to be using novel ingredients. How are you, do you find that these solutions will be safe? And what are some of the challenges that you guys are working on to make sure that it's safe for the wider consumption? Maybe Nicholas, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. I think it's important when we look at this question to take a step back and really look at what the conventional meat supply chain is posing in terms of safety or sanitary risks. And I mostly see three risks there. The first one is essentially the diseases that are infecting the animals themselves and that are causing major outbreaks. So we can talk about the bird flu, H1N1, who also hit Asia and Thailand in particular a decade ago. You have the ESB, the mad cow disease, and more recently, the very famous African swine fever. So these might be or might not be transmissible to humans, but the main consequence of them is that they are causing major outbreaks, and therefore they are causing major shortages in the meat production because the animals need to be euthanized. And the short-term consequences of that is the devastating economical impact of this. So just in China, where the African swine fever actually decimated more than half of the pig population, it created shortages, but it was also very costly for the farmers themselves. They were put out of business. And I've read many headlines in the Chinese media that were comparing the situation to even a war. So it has very big consequences. So that's number one, the diseases that are spreading among animals. The number two is the antibiotics that are massively used in intensive farming and that are actually causing antibiotic resistance in humans. So just one figure, in the US, 70% of the antibiotics consumed are consumed by farmed animals in intensive farming. And number three, the pathogens, actually the bacteria that can contaminate the meat after slaughter, because when you slaughter an animal, you have a lot of very dangerous, potentially dangerous bacteria that can come up upon the meat and contaminate the food, causing food poisoning or infections. And one of the most famous bacteria is Salmonella. I'm sure everyone has heard of this. And essentially, when you grow the cells instead of entire animals, so you grow real animal meat, but without the need to slaughter any animal and to raise any entire animals, you tackle these three challenges. So on the disease affecting animals, well, you don't have animals, so there's no more risk of having these major outbreaks that are creating shortages, that are putting farmers out of business, etc. On antibiotics and pathogens, well, cultured meat is produced in a sterile and fully controlled environment without antibiotics, and this will be a very strong safety advantages for the consumers. So in any countries, the role of food safety agencies is to minimize consumer exposure to unsafe food products. And we really think cultured meat as a new technology can help build a much more resilient and safe supply chain, whether for countries as a whole or even for consumers. So yeah, it will also alleviate the pressure on ecosystems, which are also responsible, and we've talked about it a lot during the COVID pandemic, for pandemics, outbreaks, and this kind of risks. So essentially, cultured meat as a whole is a much safer way to produce the meat that we are already used to eat.
Yeah, thank you for clearly sort of defining some of the problems and how this technology can really overcome and provide solutions for it. Dr. Vinayaka, on your side, is there something additional that you'd like to add in terms of the possible solutions and potential for the safety of this technology?
Sure. As Nicholas mentioned, we are going to take care of make sure that there are no pathogens involved, and also we'll be significantly reducing the use of antibiotics. That's one of the major problems in the animal husbandry or animal livestock industry. And also we can be immune from this kind of pandemic affecting. COVID has really shown us the problems in animal meat industry. That is, like, if there is some issue, other countries, even if countries which don't have an animal farming sector, will also get affected. So one of the advantages of going with cultivated meat is the land usage that is required to produce meat can be significantly reduced. And it does not matter whether you're a large country or a small country. Every country has their own production system. So this gives a significant kind of advantage for food security issue for countries. And then, even if there are some outbreaks of diseases, countries can defend themselves, at least with the food supply chain. So this has a major impact going forward. Like COVID will teach many countries about the importance of food supply chain. So we are going to be ensuring that every country, irrespective of what your economic situation is, will have the advantage when it comes to at least with food supply chain. So then again, we are going to be using a huge amount of plant-based resources to grow these cells. So we can also reduce the burden on the environment. So that's also one of the major changes that we are going to see in the future. So yeah, I think this has a major potential, and it's just like we have to make sure we see to the end of it properly.
Yeah, and I think Vinny is talking about the efficiency of cultured meat. That's a very strong point. We've been talking about the safety benefits, but animals have not been optimized to produce food for human consumption. You know, they've been optimized to just live their own lives. So when you cultivate directly what you eat, which is cells, because when you're eating conventional meat, you're already eating cells, you're already eating animal cells. But when you only grow these cells, well, you have so much more efficient supply chain, and what we call the feed to food ratio. So essentially the amount of feed that is given to animals compared to the amount of food, of meat that we harvest, it's not really in favor of intensive farming. We think we can do so much better by growing directly cells. So yeah, it's a very strong point to mention about cultured meat.
Absolutely. And I think, you've really shown clearly that this technology can solve so many problems, for food security, for efficiency, being able to use less land, water, other resources that would be conventionally used for the traditional livestock. So it seems that everybody should be on board with this in terms of, governments should be open and willing to accept this technology. The R&D is there. There are a lot of companies working on it. But I think everyone is also curious from the consumer side. Will they accept it? So, I know that, in regions like in the US and Europe, let's say consumers are already wary about, let's say, novel ingredients and labels that have, GMO or allergens or any other type of, let's say, unnatural or unfamiliar products. So my question for you, Vin, is, for Gaia Foods, and because you're based in Asia Pacific, what are some of the major concerns for Asian consumers? And do you think, and what do you expect for their, let's say, reaction towards this new novel technology?
As in any other technology, people are not open to adapt to new technology at the beginning. So one of the major point we have to take care and make sure is transparency. Right from the get-go, we have to keep a public informed about what is this technology and give them a window to come and observe like how we produce meat. Like if we really produce things in a very closed environment without really showing what exactly we are doing, of course it creates a certain amount of skepticism in people. So one of the major area we will be thinking about in future is allow people and general audience to come and take a look and explain to them what is this technology. If you look at from a big picture point of view, we are not doing anything that animals are doing. We are exactly doing what animals are doing, but in a much more efficient manner. And on top of that, what we are trying to do is we are adapting most of the natural ingredients in the mixture, which are, for example, one of the technology we are trying to use is we are locally sourcing our scaffold material to grow these cells. So this gives advantage, like people, like example, if people in Thailand, if they are used to eating certain food, we'll be using materials from those foods. So adapting to people's taste will be much faster for us. And again, we are open to collaboration with many different types of people. Like Asia is not a one kind of continent. There are variety of food cultures in Asia. So we really have to focus on producing meat that people are used to, rather than completely coming out with a complete new meat. What we are focusing on, producing the same meat people are going to use. It's just that we are producing in a different manner. It's not natural. It's pretty much natural way. It's just that we are producing in a different manner. So this should elevate people's concern about the fear of technology. Well, once people know what exactly we are doing, I think they should be able to see the potential of this technology.
If I can just complement with one word, I think that's very key what Vin has been saying. And it might appear at first glance as non-natural because it's not produced within the body of an animal, but in fact, what happens within the body of an animal, that's exactly what we replicate in another environment. So the cells, as soon as they have the best environment, like the best feed, the best temperature, the best pH, they just grow. They grow naturally. So we are essentially leveraging their natural capacities of multiplying and making what we call biomass, and that we just harvest then afterwards. So yeah, again, I like this example of ice. For a long period of human history, we were used to only, using natural ice that were harvested in places where you had actually ice. But now once you open your fridge or your freezers and you pour, just ice cubes in your glass, do you call that synthetic ice or lab-grown ice or electricity-based ice or whatever? I think not. So we are, food is a technology, and we're getting used very quickly to other ways of producing ingredients or food that we were used to and that we used to produce in different ways. So it just, moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like this example. And I think, even for you, Nicholas, the product that you're targeting is quite unique. Foie gras has a lot of controversy around it, even as an animal-based product. And, I'm just curious, from, let's say, your standpoint, how do you see this product, expanding into Southeast Asia? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the opportunities and also the impact, that you will have on animal cruelty.
Sure. So yeah, I think foie gras is both known for its taste and unique flavor and texture, but also for the controversy. So as you mentioned, it's being banned in many countries. As of now, today in September 2020, 17 countries have actually banned the production. So I think it's one of the most controversial food products that you can find. You could compare that to shark fins, for instance. It's a very controversial product with a strong market behind. So there's a big consumer demand for that. But more and more countries or chefs or restaurants or consumers are kind of boycotting that product because it looks a bit obsolete the way we treat the animals to make this delicacy. And of course, the Asian market as a whole is a big land of opportunity for us because foie gras consumption as a French delicacy is becoming more and more popular mostly in restaurants. So it's growing rapidly in China. I've spent many months recently just before the pandemic in Singapore, and you can see foie gras on the menu of many, many good restaurants. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the most premium restaurants. It's also a delicacy that is consumed by, just casually, still in good restaurants. So the restaurants market will be our first distribution channels. And it might be the case for all cultured meat products, because obviously this technology will have an impact on the price at first. So for the first phase of the launch. And therefore the premium channels like high-end restaurants might be the first place in the upcoming months or years where you're going to see this first product. And of course, for us as a poultry company, we are really deeply looking at Asia and Southeast Asia in particular as a land of opportunity, because that's mostly where the growth engine for meat consumption is located. So meat consumption is set to almost double by 2050, but most of that demand is actually coming from Asia and Southeast Asia in particular, where most people accessing middle class, one of the first things that they do is increase their meat consumption. So if you're an impact company willing to have an impact on sustainability of food production, you really have to be all in and focusing on the Asian market and the Southeast Asia market more specifically. And just looking also at the poultry market more specifically, countries like Indonesia, for instance, they are driving the poultry market demand. So yeah, there's no way we only stick to our Parisians or French audience. We're really bullish on the Asian market for sure.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And taking also a step back, of course, you all have, a lot of ambitions to launch your products, and I guess, define and I guess, build up distribution channels. But, going back to the R&D, I know that, for the cell-based sector, there are a lot of, let's say, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to optimize the scale and the production of these products. And I'm just curious, from, your ecosystem, do you feel that the infrastructure is there and you're getting the right government support in your regions? And maybe I'll ask this first to you, Ben, what are sort of your experiences with scaling up this production?
Sure. Yes, this technology, unfortunately, we don't have a company or a model to replicate from. We don't have any full-scale production facility anywhere in the world. So given that, we can't simply replicate that concept. But when you look outside of that, we are based in Singapore. One of the main advantage of being in Singapore is if you go just 5 to 10 kilometers in any direction, look for any technology you want, you can find people who can help you with the idea of building up the technology. So why we are based in Singapore is mainly because of a technical advantage we will get over a period of time. But going forward, once we optimize the process of how to build the technology, it should not be a big issue. Like we can, like, if someone asks, like, hey, can I come and place a facility in Thailand? Those things should not be a big barrier for any countries to start up this technology. Right now, we are in the very beginning stages of this revolution. So we have to put more emphasis on research and development aspect of it. But we are pretty sure about, like, going forward, once we figure out most of the components that are required to make this technology into a large-scale production system, I think it should not be a big barrier for any country. We can just adapt to local setting in any place we can.
Yeah, that's the beauty of cultured meat. You can produce it essentially anywhere in the world, no matter the temperature, no matter the ecosystem there. So yeah,
exactly.
It's very promising on that aspect. I agree.
Yeah.
And in our case, we've been benefiting from government support in France. So yeah, just to complement that question from Dr. Dalal about is there any support for this new emerging industry? I would say that obviously not enough as of yet, but it's getting there and it's growing. And just yesterday, we've seen the biggest grant in the US. It's a grant of 3.5 million USD that is being pumped into the cell-based meat industry. So it's getting there. In France, we are fortunate that we are supported by the French government and the French Public Investment Bank. So I think every country will quickly become aware of the promises of cultured meat technology when it comes to food independence and food security. Because most countries, and it's very obvious in countries like Singapore that are importing a lot of their food, but it can apply to any national context. Countries need to produce their food locally. They don't want to rely on imports so much. So cultured meat can be essentially implemented in any kind of regions, no matter, again, the weather, the temperature, the agricultural ecosystem. So I think it's just a matter of months or years that all countries will realize the potential and inject massive amounts of dollars or euros or whatever in the ecosystem, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm always very curious, from let's say the product side, what is your initial product that you're going to be launching? Maybe Nicholas, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. So our initial product is a foie gras that is, matching foie gras lovers' expectations. So foie gras is a meat product, but to some extent, it's a product that is closer to cheese because you have a high level of animal fat. And it can sound like it's a not healthy product, but it's a pleasure product. So you don't consume foie gras at breakfast. You consume foie gras because you want to have an amazing experience, an amazing food experience. It's a very rich delicacy. It's melting in the mouth. It has very specific flavor. So anyone who has eaten foie gras can relate to what I'm saying. So that our first goal is to really replicate that amazing gastronomical experience. And we think actually it's a very strong story because in a sense you're merging innovation and tradition because foie gras is a very traditional product. So we want to show that technology can also help food delicacies and food traditions into the 21st century by just producing them in a different way. Because I'm sure consumers do not buy foie gras because of force feeding or because of animal cruelty. They consume foie gras despite of that. So if we can deliver the same experience without all the negative outcomes, I think we have a very strong market opportunity and it will please consumers. So foie gras is our first product. And then obviously with the economies of scales, as you scale up the production, then you can target much more mainstream and mass market products like deli meats. You can think of chicken nuggets or pork dumplings or even duck breast. So this is definitely the roadmap that we have in-house, starting with foie gras and then leveraging our know-how on cultivating duck and chicken cells to make much more daily and mass market products to have an even higher environmental impact, because at the end of the day, that's really the mission of gourmet.
Yeah, and I love that. Never compromising on taste. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Sure.
And then for you, because I know it's, you're focusing on a variety of red meats, but like in your product pipeline, what are you going to launch first? And then what is your let's say the following lines that you're willing to focus on?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we are red meat focused companies, and two of the major animal products we are looking is beef and pork. compared to many other Western countries, in Asia, we don't consume minced product on a regular basis. For example, we don't consume sausages, we don't consume meatballs on a regular basis. However, in Asia, we consume like pork belly or chicken, beef chops and things like that. It's a structured meat. So we are going to produce options for different local cuisines. And our three main criteria for going to market is taste and texture, and of course, pricing over a long period of time. But two main focuses, taste and texture. We are super focused on achieving taste and texture for different meats. And once we are anywhere close to that, I think we can think of a variety of products. But initially, it will be beef and pork, and then we can expand to chicken and mutton and other red meats to think about. But yeah, because, as I mentioned, Asia is responsible for 40% of the red meat consumed. So we really need to provide options here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that as well, really focusing on, so many different types of cuisines and nationalities. So there's so much opportunity in this space. So I really, thank both of you for showing us, these great examples of how cultured meat technology can really, define and innovate our food supply system. So, I think just as closing remarks, thank you so much for both being with us today. And, just maybe if you could both give us just sort of like words of advice for our audience and words of, hope that, what you're doing is really going to work. It's going to be achieved within our lifetimes. So yeah, maybe Nicholas, if you'd like to start.
Sure. So one word of hope is that we are actually almost every week eating and having tasting internally at Gourmet, at our location, of cell-based meat. So we are actually eating and producing cell-based meat. So it's not a sci-fi thing that you're going to see in 20, 30 years from now. It's actually happening. And as a closing remark, I'd love to say that there's never been a better moment to either join or invest or start an alternative protein company, and more specifically a cell-based meat company, because again, people remain very attached to conventional and to real animal proteins. So although I'm very bullish and I'm very hopeful of the plant-based market that is booming, I think we also need to kind of give a new choice for consumers that want to stick to real animal meat, but produce in a much more sustainable and efficient way.
Wise words.
Yeah, sure. So from what we believe is, as Nicholas mentioned, this is not a technology of the future. It is already there. Its only thing is we are trying to produce in a cost-effective manner. And what we strongly believe is, like, in coming future, when you go to a supermarket or anywhere, you'll have the choice of two different meat. One is butchered meat from the animal, or one is cultured meat. So you clearly see that advantages and disadvantages, what are the differences between these two, and you make a conscious choice whether you want to eat the meat killed by animal, killed from the killed animal, or just a normal, simple, healthy meat that you can get from cultured meat. So don't think this is a very sci-fi technology. Please do come talk to us. We are very happy to explain what is this technology, and we'll definitely give you insights about how we are producing things, what are the things we are putting in. So this kind of helps you to make your own choice. We don't want to force you this technology. We'll give all the options for you, then you go from there. That's the main thing. And don't fear the technology. This is nothing unusual. This is pretty much natural process of things.
Yeah, and food has always been a technology.
Yeah.
Well said. And that's why we love this space, and that's why Big Idea Ventures have invested in both these gentlemen and their amazing, really innovative and innovative and amazing companies. So thank you both for being with us today. It's an absolute pleasure to moderate this panel, and I hope the audience have enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for having us.
Great
Thank you.
exchange
Thanks
of
for your time,
information.
everyone.
Thank you very much to our speakers, Vinayaka Srinivas and Nicholas Morin Forrest, and also thanks to our moderator, Dr. Dalal Argawas, Program Director of Big Idea Ventures. Thank you so much. All right, we'll now take another short break right here. Coming up next, we have more to share right here at the virtual seminar on the last and final day of Startup Thailand and ITE Innovation Thailand Expo 2020. Stay tuned.